네,
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, everyone. This is the 17th Jeju Forum. The theme of the session is Cultural City as a Platform for Coexistence and Co-Evaluation. We have a lot of audience in this room today, which represents a high expectation for this session. Let's get started. First of all, I want everyone in this room make sure that keep your masks on until the end of the session, and please make sure your cell phones are in the silence mode and the interpretation is available. Please use the receiver English channel for number 2 and number 1 for Korean channel. Let me introduce our moderator, Mr. Kim, who is the Vice Chairman and Committee for Cultural Cooperation, Jeju Special Self-Governing Province. The Dean, is the Dean of the College of Economics and Commerce at Jeju National University, and he's also the Vice Chairman of the Jeju Special Self-Governing Province Cultural Cooperation Committee. Please give him a big hand. Good afternoon, everyone. I am your moderator today, Dean of the College of Economics and Commerce at Jeju National University. This is the 17th Jeju Forum under the theme of Beyond Conflict Towards Peace, Coexistence, and Cooperation. We are here to seek ways of cooperation and to achieve co-evaluation for local culture. Let me first introduce our panelists and speakers. Please give them a big hand. I believe they are like an artist. They will be very encouraged by your big hand. First of all, Mr. Pierluigi Sacco. He is the Senior Advisor of Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and he is also Professor of Chieti Pescara University at Italy. And he has provided consulting services for many people for education and culture. Please give him a big hand. And the second speaker is the CEO, Kim Hyuk-ju of B Local Company. He has worked on sustainable and sustained local business ecosystem growth to help those local brands grow further. Please give him a big hand. And after the two speakers' presentation, we have panelists. First of all, we have Mr. Shin Yong-sik, who is the Director of Hallyu Content Cooperation Division of Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism of South Korea. In this post-COVID-19 era, he has devised a lot of policies for Hallyu content so that Hallyu can contribute to the world peace. The second panelist is Mr. Kim Tae-kwan, who is the expert advisor of Jeju International Wind Ensemble Festival Organizing Committee. He is also professor of Jeju University. He specialized in classical music, and he has made a lot of contribution to the spread of classical music of Jeju. And lastly, we have Mr. Lee Kwang-jun, who is the director of Seogwipo City Center for Cities of Culture. Since 2019, he has worked on Seogwipo Culture City project to spread the city's culture, which is called open air culture, across the world. Let's get started for this session. And let me first introduce Mr. Sacco about the culture city. Please.
Thank you very much for this very nice invitation to speak today at the Jeju conference, I think that this is a very important moment to reflect on the big potential that Korean cities and rural areas at the same time have in the future development trajectories at the global level, and the importance of culture-led development for world cohesion and peace. In this presentation, I will in particular insist on the fact that, of course, we have emphasized the big impact that cultural-led development and the whole Hallyu phenomenon has for big cities, but it's also important to stress the value that culture-led development can have for relatively smaller cities and for rural areas. I think that this is one of the crucial aspects of future strategic development of the cultural strategy of Korea for the next few years. So first of all, it's important to understand that the cultural development is not only for big cities. There can be huge opportunities for cultural development for smaller cities. And I make an example. Here there are two very small cities in Europe. They are almost villages, Esch-sur-Alzette in Luxembourg and Bad Ischl in Austria. It can be that Esch is already this year the European capital of culture, and Bad Ischl will be in the next years. So you see that even small villages can even have the status of a capital for culture if they have the right projects and the right visions. So what is really important is to be innovative and ambitious. It's not only size. What are the factors that determine the ambition, that determine the capacity to become a cultural powerhouse, even if you are small? Here I take the liberty of mentioning two papers that I published back in 2013 that provided a conceptual framework that we will briefly discuss today, both in terms of the key factors and in terms of some examples of successful and not so successful cases that are covered in these two papers. So there are basically 12 different dimensions that explain what are the success factors for cultural development. There are three that are connected to quality. So the first one is quality of cultural supply, creative excellence. It's very important not simply to rely on tradition and on local talent. It's very important to be at the frontier of cultural innovation. In this regard, Hallyu today puts the whole Korean system at the frontier of cultural innovation. It's very important that this kind of activity, experimentation, is not simply confined to Seoul and to the big cities, but also is decentralized in smaller places. The second factor that is very important is the quality of the production of knowledge, so the presence of cutting-edge educational and research institutions. Today, we also see a decentralization of these processes. Again, it's very important to have groups of researchers and the advanced teaching practices and educational practices that also happen outside the big urban centers. And the third point, very, very important, is the quality of local governance. It's very difficult without a visionary, dynamic local administration to achieve big results in terms of cultural development. And it's not incidental that, for example, in Berlin, there is every year now a festival for creative bureaucracy. It's extremely important that administrations understand that they are part of the creative economy. We tend to think that administrations have, let's say, the nitty-gritty part, the one that is boring, that one is just about procedures, but today, without a visionary administrative leadership, it's very difficult to have sustainable processes of cultural-led development. Another couple of very, very important factors are attraction and development. So first of all, attraction of external talent. We know that Korea today is becoming increasingly attractive for talent all over the world. The extraordinary success, the global success of Hallyu is bringing so many local talents to Korea. It's very important, again, to understand that this attraction should not only benefit the big cities, it should really also benefit the smaller centers. And this is possible if the smaller centers, as we will see in a moment, offer specific advantages that the big cities are not able to offer. And the other aspect that, of course, goes hand in hand is the attraction of external investments. From this point of view, again, Korea is performing pretty well, but especially in the culture and creative sector, I think that there is a huge further opportunity to attract investment. And of course, these investments are not only Netflix or Disney opening studios, for example, for TV production, but can be also the most innovative part of investment that are related, for example, to the future development like the metaverse, like Web3, and so on. Then there are two dimensions that are more related to the local dimension, in particular, development of local talent. We know, of course, that talent is everywhere, but it's very important to give opportunities for emerging. And from this point of view, for example, specific projects that have to do with talent acceleration are particularly important. And again, they are abundant in big cities, but not so much in smaller cities and in rural areas. So it's extremely important to consider this as a possibility. And at the same time, it's very important to consider local creative entrepreneurship. In Europe, we have just launched an enormous project for a culture and creative ecosystem that is financed with 150 million euros just to start, and to create a thriving ecosystem for local and young entrepreneurship. We are particularly keen to connect, for example, to the most innovative and emerging countries in the global panorama, and Korea is clearly one of those. I think that this kind of projects, so developing local entrepreneurship, are today absolutely crucial. And I think that concentrating again the attention on the smaller centers for these programs is very important. And then we have one dimension, that of sociality, that is particularly important for the topic of today, so the global peace and coexistence. So we have, of course, exciting examples of culture-led development, but the problem is also that there are social criticalities. Some people feel excluded. Some people are marginalized. It's very important from this point of view to reach out to the most, to the weakest, to the less guaranteed, to the less robust part of our society. So, for example, people who have educational disadvantages, people who have social marginality, is extremely important to consider them as part of the local development model and to devise specific initiatives to include them. And then, of course, in particular, involving the local community as a community. So from this point of view, there are plenty of examples of very successful projects of community participation in small cities and rural areas that can become very, very inspiring examples for designing new policies in this field. And finally, capability building is extremely important, not only to involve the local community, but to provide opportunities for skills and capability building. Culture, from this point of view, can be extremely effective, because through culture, people are energized, people are happy to learn, people are, in some sense, discovering new potential and new possibilities they didn't think they had. So from this point of view, the capability building part is extremely important. And finally, networking. First of all, internal networking. What do we mean by this? Small cities, for example, are relatively small in terms of size, in terms of critical mass. But if we are able to create networks of local cities, and within the cities, networks of different agents, different groups, different communities, that helps a lot in terms of improving the capacity of the city to become culturally thriving. And finally, external networking, the capacity to reach out to other cities, other communities outside the region, outside the country. So it's extremely important to create global networks from this point of view, in which you can exchange ideas, talent, resources, inspiration. So these are the 12 key dimensions. And how hell you can make a difference from culture for culture-led development. There are several aspects that are emerging with ALU that I think are particularly important to characterize the Korean approach to this. First of all, creativity is for everyone. You know, what is really interesting of ALU is that it's very democratic. There is a huge possibility for everybody to participate very creatively. Not incidentally, ALU has flourished during the period of digital content production, in which everybody can take part. Second, culture can become a resource for looking at problems from a different angle and bringing new energy. I think that this is one of the most interesting and promising approach to the next phase of Hallyu in Korea, the idea of considering Hallyu as a platform to tackle societal challenges, for example, global peacemaking and global sustainability. This is extremely important because it can be very useful to communities to leverage upon the creative power of Hallyu to tackle problems from a different angle. Third, the power of the group. Hallyu is very much about the group and not just the single individuals, the single superstars. That's very important. The group today is crucial because every kind of problem cannot be solved alone. It's extremely important that people start thinking in terms of collective intelligence. And from this point of view, I think Hallyu offers lots of inspiration. But also at the same time, it's innovative, but it's also related to tradition. So being inspired by tradition, creating a red thread through the cultural history of the country, that's extremely important. And that's, for example, a lesson that in Europe we also resonate a lot because we have a very similar mentality from this point of view. And finally, stories. Stories are everywhere. If you want to change the behavior of people, you have to tell convincing stories. People understand stories much better than they understand the theories and figures and every kind of information. So stories are an extremely powerful platform for behavioral change. And from this point of view, clearly Hallyu provides us with an incredible treasure of stories. So what are the benefits? Why the smaller cities and the rural areas could become also part of a global strategy, for example, for the next stage of Hallyu? Because they have lots of benefits that the big cities cannot have. More affordable housing, more affordable living. These issues are very, very important because today, of course, affordability, especially for young creative talents, becomes an extremely serious problem. So the potential of offering affordable housing and living is a big asset for smaller centers that they should leverage upon. Then, more cohesive communities. In the smaller cities, it's easier to create a social connection. It's easier to belong. That's extremely important because especially young creative talents they feel to belong. They feel the need to belong. So from this point of view, of course, big cities offer plenty of opportunities of meeting interesting people, but at the same time, the sense of belonging is very challenged and strained. Then, of course, a better contact with nature, especially now in the post-pandemic era, the relationship with nature, not only for inspiration, but for quality of living, is becoming important. So again, rural areas and smaller cities have a huge opportunity to leverage upon these specific assets. And then, of course, a better life-work balance, because, for example, you spend much less time in commuting. You spend much less time in activities that are welfare-destroying, but that are, of course, inevitable in cities. But at the same time, you can really plan a quieter living that is, again, more energizing, more inspiring in a smaller center. So for all these reasons, smaller cities and rural areas can be attractive also for emerging creative talents. So the next powerhouses are not only just in the big cities, but also in the smaller ones. And finally, each place is different. We cannot have one recipe. There are different factors that combine in different ways in different places. So first of all, we cannot simply imitate success. Every single territory must find their own way. Second, the 12 factors that we illustrated can be combined in very different ways. So in certain contexts, for example, society is more important. In other contexts, attraction of talent is more important. In other contexts, for example, a visionary public administration is more important. So the mix between the factors can change from place to place. Third point, don't be scared by change. Of course, change disrupts things, and especially in smaller cities and rural areas, this can be seen as threatening, but change from this point of view can be embraced if you have a solid vision. So change is not a threat. And make conflict constructive and not destructive. Conflict is inevitable. When you change, when you develop new ideas, somebody feels threatened, somebody doesn't understand immediately, so some kind of conflict is inevitable, but conflict can also become an extremely interesting source of new energy if you solve it constructively. And finally, of course, listen to the voices of everybody and leverage upon collective intelligence. That's really the future. The digital economy and society that we are building is a society in which there are not simply a small number of specialists leading the way for everybody, but is the power of collective intelligence, really being able to leverage upon the whole intelligence and skills and ideas of the community to develop new strategies. And so, 감사합니다. I'm very happy to have had the occasion to share with you these thoughts and really look forward to the exciting future endeavors of Korea to become a global cultural leader.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you, Mr. Sako. You said 감사합니다, and the pronunciation was the perfect one. And you emphasize that the local development should be done through the power of culture, and you suggested 12 factors, and you also talked about how to develop cultural, local culture through Hallyu. And third, I live in Jeju, and I meet a lot of citizens of Seogwipo city, and they say the city is very small. But you said smaller cities have strengths, advantages, which is very impressive. And the role of government and responsibility are also important. I am the professor of economics and business. So the cultural-led development, as for this development, I believe educational institutions and entrepreneurs is very important. So the role of universities and companies are very important. Your speech was really, really impressive. Thank you for your speech. Let's move on to the second speaker, CEO of Be Local, Kim Hyuk-ju. He would talk about the expansion of local culture to promote sustainability of the local community. Good afternoon. As introduced, I am Kim Hyuk-ju. There have been a lot of insights that we have learned from Professor Saku's presentation, and actually all those theories, activities are actually happening in Korea. So I will introduce you with some real cases in Korea. Over the last 5 and 4 years, Be Local, my company, has helped many local companies with their cultural strengths, and we are also a startup. And my presentation today consists of 4 different parts to tell you how Korea is identifying sustainability and how the spread of local culture led by the private sector, local culture led by consumers and producers, and sustainability of local communities promoted by local culture. 20 marks 2022, right? I will talk about what does localness mean in Korea in 2022. We have many universities and institutions and many other people who talk about localness, about what we are doing is an activity that is led by the local and private sector. And third, there used to be only a small group of people, so-called masters, who produce cultural services or products, but today it is consumers who are actually leading the trend. So let's take a look at the new role of consumers. And lastly, I will talk about sustainability of local communities. I don't think Korea has already found the answer, but we are on the way to find the right solution, which is very encouraging. First of all, let's talk about what does localness mean in Korea in 2022. I have 5 keywords, and we have about 40 odd people in this room. I think you have heard a lot of the word local in Korean. Of course, it is English, but for many Koreans, I believe they have many different definitions about this word, local, this word. And let's take a look at the different definitions of localness and local content. In local communities, culture has become resource and business opportunity as well. And local creators are creating those local culture. This is a word that is become popular in Korea, and they are explaining and reflecting individuals' values by creating local content. So they are called local creator. And what they are creating is called local content. In the past, we had cities, provinces, those brands were quite large and broad, but today consumers and producers work together, interact together, forging a local brand. And lastly, let me talk about local businesses. The businesses, they are businesses who represent many different local communities, and they are working really hard to identify sustainability of the local communities and lifestyles of a city is turning into a local business. As I explained before, localness is no longer the term that expresses rural areas. A lot of articles on the internet before, in the past, they used the term local areas as a rural areas without enough development, economic development. But today, how about today? The concept has changed. It is a concept with which you can find new things and creativity and potential as well. So I want to say localness in Korean means a lifestyle. So it's not just about, no longer about economic benefits. Many Korean individuals want to have their own lifestyle. So those local areas and local communities have become an opportunity for them to identify their own potential to grow further. That's what we found. And another point is the flow of consumptions. You might have heard that the local communities, local stores, and in the past, those local store areas were designated by government officials. But how about today? They are not designated by the government any longer. And those local commercial zones are created by consumers by themselves, and they identify and find and explore those great stores by themselves very actively. And localness and local community still means the region. In the past, we called local areas and saying that they are marginalized areas, rural areas, underdeveloped areas. But today, local areas don't really have that meaning anymore. And in the past, we used to use some words saying that those local areas are not developed, and they use their unique words and dialect to identify, to say that they are not developed. Then how about local creators? In the past, they are just artists who spread local culture for the general public. But how about today? They turn those small towns into very popular places. That's the role, that's a new role played by local creators. And today, creators are creating many new local communities. One of the prime examples is potato bread in a city called Chuncheon. For example, a father. Let me tell you the origin of the potato bread. Daughter, who believes her father's potato is really, really good, so she started cooking bread using the potato harvested by her father. And she loves her hometown Chuncheon, and Chuncheon has become a brand with 600,000 visitors every year, and they use potatoes for their bread, and you have to peel the potatoes, right? And that created a lot of jobs for the elderly. More than 30 and 20 billion Korean won was earned a year. That created a local brand, and it has become local brand and local culture. And potatoes, the concept of potatoes, has also evolved. Actually, when she started her business, she didn't really have a big idea. She just wanted to tell people her father's potatoes are very delicious, but it has become very big. Many people got to realize that I had a wrong conception about Chuncheon and potatoes as well. Her cafe has become a new place for people, bringing together many people from many different areas. And now consumers, they enjoy culture and consume culture and create virtuous cycle. And as they consume culture, they now think that they can produce culture. Those who love music also become artists by themselves. The same thing goes for the broad concept of culture. Many consumers, as they love the cultural content, they get to become a creator by themselves because they love the culture, and they are creating and identifying sustainability. And the slide shows a very simple concept. On the left, you can see the light colors. Those are the concept, local content and local brand in our daily life. And those normal life has become part of abnormal activities. And culture has become very welcomed in the cities. So this is not the original intent of producers, but with growing interaction between consumers and producers, many local communities have had new concept and new brands. Second, the spread of local culture led by the private sector. Let me give you 3 different examples. We have 1,000 teams utilizing local culture to create new business opportunities. We have 3 different local areas, Incheon, Busan, and Jeju. We have a lot of local creators in Jeju, and let me explain one of the examples, Jeju beer. First, Incheon Gaehanglo project. Have you watched Mr. Sunshine, a TV series of Korea? When Incheon opened its port to accept foreign culture, the port area was filled with a lot of people in the past, but it has become very old. And now local creators have worked together with elderly citizens there to show people their tradition. So there is a street, 1.3 kilometer long street, and they are demonstrating their tradition. And Korea has a special noodle called jolmyeon. The jolmyeon related content has become very popular recently in Korea, and this is also part of the project's effort. This is called Gaehanglo project in Incheon. And we have alcohol here. Amjad generation, those who were born in the 90s and 80s, they have their own unique culture. For example, in Incheon, they create and produce their own beer to upgrade the old streets in Incheon into a new one that can attract many young people. And beer is a mass-produced ones in many different places, but this Incheon beer is only produced in the city, which is attracting many consumers. So the beer has a unique identity as Incheon beer. The street has a lot of best restaurants and many cultural stores. So we now have a restaurant tour so that people can visit many different restaurants at the very same time, enjoying the culture and history of the city. This is another product. And the second case is 무명일기, a cafe in Busan, Yeongdo. And it is actually has become very popular in Korea, together with Jeju's Haenyeo, the female divers. This is a traditional local community which has become popular again in recent days, and they provide performance-based dining services, and they use Yeongdo-produced sweet potatoes, and they provide a lot of performance services for MZ generation, which is very new. Actually, in some cases, they also use some old depots, old warehouses to turn them into a new stage. Third example is about Jeju. Jeju beer is already very popular, which doesn't really require any further explanation. Jeju beer is now being exported to overseas countries as well as a cultural content. Jeju beer creates its unique culture, and in foreign countries, when they have an interview with foreign outlets, they also talk about the culture of Jeju, and they say Jeju's local culture is very, very important for them, which I feel very proud of. And the Jeju Beer, the group, encourages people to live in Jeju for 1 month. This is a kind of movement attracting many visitors and travelers to stay longer in Jeju. Third part of my presentation is about local culture. And many consumers, as I told you earlier, especially MZ generation, they love local culture, believing that this is the source of their identity and creativity. Local brand consumption that reflects values and preference of individuals. Just like Busan and Incheon cases, in the past, those culture and tradition used to be part of our daily lives, but now they have become upgraded as a platform and content to reflect their identity and values. And many people believe that it is a short-term trend, but I don't think so. Not only MZ generation, but also many people across the nation, they focus on their life, the meaning of their life, and they ultimately focus on local culture, trying to find their own significance in the local community to create another better local culture. That's what we learned from our interviews. Fourth, sustainability of local communities promoted by local culture. As I introduced through the three cases, we have 2,000 or 3,000 teams. They interact with customers, with their entrepreneurship. They attract a lot of opportunities, resources, and people to their local communities. In the past, people used to want to live in large cities, but not anymore. Many people love smaller cities today, and after enjoying those local cities' culture, many growing number of people prefer to living in those smaller cities. In the past, only artists or a small number of people who they have inherited the tradition. But how about today? We love our past or recent past as well, and those cultural content is now becoming very popular. Those MZ generation, they find their own identity in local culture, creating a great relationship with culture. And third, everyone has smartphone, and we can visit other cities, traveling very long distances, spending by spending only a short period of time. And the concept of rural areas, communities, is disappearing, and many people want to find something new. This is a new concept of local communities. And lastly, let me wrap up. People are increasingly create local culture by themselves, and this is increasing and promoting sustainability. Now, sustainability is a new focus for them. This is not just the object for support. They are creating communities by themselves, utilizing those natural resources to create new culture. And this is not being done not by a few people, but by majority of people, the public. And secondly, local creators who create local culture and attract many visitors have become brands. In the past, only a selected few became those local creators, but not anymore. And those creators have become a kind of brand. What is entrepreneurship? It is about contributing to our society and making more efforts. Consumers are also supporting this kind of concept, and entrepreneurs are also working toward this direction. And lastly, sustainability. It is not just identified by or pursued by producers, also by consumers. The boundaries between consumers and producers are not very clear like they did before, and it is a very broad concept. In 2022, we have a lot of local creators, local culture, local cities. We have a lot of entrepreneurs, startups, but 5 or 10 years later, we would be able to see many individuals who pursue their own lifestyle to have more and more local cultural content within different local communities. The theme of today's session is a cultural city as a platform for coexistence and co-evolution. That concludes my presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a very passionate presentation. I think he prepared a lot. So he gave us the definition of localness, right? Actually, local is English, and we also Koreans use local as Korean as well. In the past, local meant some rural areas, but today local means a competitiveness of local communities. And he also introduced a lot of successful cases, best practices in Incheon, Busan, and Jeju as well. Could you remember Jeju beer? You used to have it before, but in the past it failed, but today it succeeded. Why? This is something we need to explore. Then let's get into a discussion session. I will ask each panelist to give us some comments. First of all, Mr. Shin, please. Thank you very much. And Professor Sako, cultural-led development and 12 factors, small cities, and those factors, when they are combined, we can have a very brand new development strategy, which was very impressive for me. And I am in charge of Hallyu policies. Hallyu is a Korean pop culture which is spreading across the world, and we have a lot of fandoms, and the industry is growing very fast and continuously. Today's theme is a cultural city as a platform for coexistence and co-evolution. Seogwipo City of Culture and our CEO Kim Hyuk-ju also talked about it. The trend, if you look at the trend, we are living in the COVID-19 era and things are changing very fast. And when we think about what made Hallyu very famous, we can think of many different factors. Of course, there's the role of the government, but the acceptability of the culture and the competitiveness of the content and the IT, which served as a platform, and fandom economy, and the government also provided a lot of support. So many factors have been combined to help Hallyu grow exponentially. The Korean government so far used to become a fast follower, but it should work as fast mover. That means we need to take more active actions. And as I heard from Professor Sako, I got to have this idea. We can work together, global think tank institute, to explore new policies to further develop Hallyu or cultural trends. In the past, we used to follow some new emerging trends, but from now on, we can create those trends by ourselves. And we can utilize our unique characteristics, and it's time for the government to play an important role. The 12 factors, that's what we have to study further. And Mr. Kim, he talked about local creators, and this is what we have focused on so far. Within a short period of time, there have been a lot of growth in this sector, and I was really happy to see that trend. And I'm sorry, as an official, that those potato breads and Jeju beer, these are all just beverages or food, which means the government still need to deregulate the industry so that local creators can have more opportunities. Those local creators are playing an important role, and their role should be supported by the government so that they can also go global. For example, we can utilize local culture, and we can combine those culture with our Hallyu culture. And in Korea, those local culture is playing an important role in Korea, but not outside Korea. So the Korean government can provide some help for them by promoting a lot of communication with them. We can move forward. We used to focus on manufacturing, but how about content and culture? Culture can spread very fast and it can grow very big. And when content is strong, the content can go beyond the platform. So that emphasizes the importance and power of content. That would be the future focus of the government. Based on the two speakers' presentation, we will make a lot of effort. Thank you. Any further comment from two speakers, two presenters? If not, let's move on to the second panelist. Let's invite Mr. Kim.
오래 기다렸습니다. 너무 딱딱한.
Thank you. I have waited too long. I haven't tried Jeju beer that much. What is better is the soju, the strong one, Halla-san, Halla brand. But I'm not here to talk about liquor. I'm here to talk about Jeju. As for Seogwipo, we do not have a big population, but we host a very popular. Actually, Verona Festival is a very, very famous music festival. And the city or the town is as small as Seogwipo. And it launched 1913, and the festival marked 100 years. And you know, Edinburgh Festival, it marks 70th year. And the population of the city is 500,000. That's the same population of Jeju City. As Professor Sako said, small does not mean that we are less competitive. Rather, it can be a source of our pride. And Professor Sako, he's a social economist or cultural economist, and he talked about the cultures, what kind of impact it has on economy and local development. But let me add just one more thing. Over the past 10 years, I did the master and doctor's degree at Seoul National University. Whenever we talk about the cultural policies, What are the key to the cultural policies? That's the question the professors asked. That's art. The key to that is art. So I'm going to talk about the art of Seogwipo, art of Jeju. But art cannot do it alone. We need to suit the cultural or local culture. We have a local culture in Jeju, and we need to make sure that they are linked. And the two professors presented a big vision, and they had a big discourse. And what was common upon them is that we need to utilize our locality and then make it big. And how to do that? How to make our locality into something that we can utilize for the development. Using the local cultures and culture and art can be combined into the nature and tourism, and we can come up with the cultural and artistic product. That's a conclusion. Sorry that I came up with the conclusion first. So let's go back. How come I came to this conclusion? Let's have a microscopic view. Seogwipo is very unique. I have lived in Seogwipo, which is the southern part of Jeju, and Jeju-si, which is the northern part of Jeju Island. We have strengths, weaknesses, and threats, and opportunity. It's called the SWOT, in short. What are the opportunities and strengths? Nature, and then unique culture. What are the threats and opportunities? As for Seogwipo, they are afraid of changes. I don't know how you interpret it. They do not, or they are afraid of changes. They are afraid of making changes. And people say that, and if you have lived in 100 years from the land, you still are not considered as locals. What does it mean? They are kind of exclusive to the others, and they are afraid of making changes. And in culture and arts, festival change is very important. Let me give you statistics. In Ministry of Culture and Tourism and Arts, in 2015, the number of people employed in arts per 100,000. As for the statistics, they have 65 events, which was held, art event, in the cities. What about Seoul? How many events do you think it was held? 124 events were held in Seoul during the same period. What about the figure in Jeju? 133. It surprised you, all of you, right? How come we had that many? Starting from 2014, we have about 1,000, 10,000, and we now have grown our population from 600,000 to much more. And what are they engaged in? Culture and art. Many people who are engaged in the cultural art field or industry moved down to Jeju. That's why we have that many events held per year. What should be focusing on? And at least based on the statistics, we need the policies to promote or encourage them, those who are in the arts and culture. So we can find answers for the methodology there. And let me give you one more statistics. Jeju and Seogwipo are different. When you compare the two, Jeju City they have about 50 performance centers, and Seogwipo has much more museums. 65% of the museums are located in Jeju. I'm sorry, Seogwipo. We have a famous artist, Lee Jung-sub Museum, located in Seogwipo, and these days we are creating one more museum for famous Korean painter. Back in 2014, we had a Hall of Art created in Seogwipo. We have a lot of performances taking place. 2 weeks later, or in 2 weeks from now, there will be opera about the painter Lee Jung-sub, and it has drawn a lot of attention. We should not end here. We need to continue to evolve it, continue to develop. How can we do that? In artistic management, we say that it's a PR and marketing. We should not confine ourselves to Jeju. We can do it in Seoul. If you do it twice, then if we can do that in Japan and other countries, it will be a starting point. So we have to move out, expand, and market or let our Seogwipo brand known to the others. So let's go back to the conclusion that I told you before. As those two speakers said, from the cultural economist point of view, you delivered your view, but they have something in common. In order to boost the local economy or locality, we need to utilize the culture and art. And how to develop them? We need to have a PR and marketing from the artistic management point of view. Should I add one more thing? We do not have a big enterprises. As for the art, they want to be the creative, whereas administration or government apply rules, which means that administration need to support the artist so that they can grow further. In order to boost the local development, we need to have a local culture tradition and should be able to take advantage of that. That's what the artists do. And the development should be done along with the government officials or those who are working in administration. And each they should have resources and should have the proper organization. And back in 1980s, there was some principles developed in Britain. What are the core? You should not try to regulate artists. You should provide the support, but not interfere them. That is a principle across the world. Whenever you come up with the cultural policies, we should keep that principle in mind. That's what the President Yoon echoed. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
네, 토론 감사.
Thank you for your comments. Because he worked on the practical project, so he has a lot of practical ideas. And I actually have always been wondering what culture is. We are saying that we need to promote culture-led development, and I believe everyone in this room would have different definition for culture. This is something we should think more about. And Mr. Kim, he said everything starts from art, and that way every part of our daily life would become culture. And lastly, I want to invite the director Lee Kwang-jun of Seogwipo City of Culture Urban Center. Thank you. I am Lee Kwang-jun. So this is Jeju Forum. Peace City. If we say Peace City is a disaster for Jeju, then we can is a really good thing that we can say. It is a suggestion. Then we can say that Culture City is also another opportunity. City of culture is actually not the responsibility of those artists. It is responsibility of many people, general public. This is the definition of city of culture. Then, what is the right picture for city of culture today? Last year, former Secretary General of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, said that in this new climate crisis era, cities of culture also face many different difficulties. Of course, it is not that those cities of culture can resolve all the problems, but still, using the medium of culture and art, residents in the cities can provide some ideas about for policies and projects. I want to talk about six sentences. Many youth people say that there are some cities that are not interesting at all, and there's a list of cities that are not interesting, and the number one is Daejeon. It is the least popular city. Why? Because the city has a lot of IT infrastructure, but there's no cultural places for the younger generation. And for visitors, travelers, they talk a lot about the atmosphere of a city. They try to express themselves, understand themselves, and try to interpret cities. What they pursue is interesting cities, and I believe that cities of culture should become very interesting. And second thing is a city with a lot of energy. We have a lot of projects led by museums or institutes, and I think they are not alive. We used to try to maintain the tradition and stick to the tradition, but how about those culture that is alive? We need to make sure those cultural activities are present right now. So cities of culture should have those culture that is alive and with a lot of energy. And the second thing is imagination. We can see a lot of YouTubers. They create a lot of knowledge. That is one category of YouTubers. And we can also see they combine their experiences and local stories. That's what we have witnessed so far. Jeju Island has 18,000 scenes. That means the island has a lot of imagination. Then that imagination can be utilized by the residents in a very creative and innovative way. That way, everyone knows Harry Potter, and those popular novel or content can also be created in Jeju. Fifth, I hope that the experiment should become part of our life. In science, we allow experiments because experiments can create new things. When a lot of tests and experiments are accepted and promoted, then that would be the great future for cities of culture. And as Mr. Kim said, the cities of culture should be able to combine cultural creativity and other areas of the city. From the potato breads, we can see the combination And we can also see the same example from Jeju Island's female divers. Design, innovation, and story creation, when they are combined, we can expect local economies development as well. In the 20th century, and we are living in the 21st century, cities of culture, as Professor Sako suggested, we have 12 different factors. In 2021, we have 7 cities, and one of them is Seogwipo City. Among 12 sectors, quality of cultural quality, local governance quality, 3 factors are our focus. Seogwipo City have a lot of traditional communities, so we believe that they can become a key part in the process. We are making sure those it is not that those outside the city created those trends. It's rather that the residents of the villages can participate and maintain the trend by themselves. Actually, smaller cities have their own concerns. They don't have enough creative leaders, education system, training system. That's one of their weak points. And we need to have various models, entrepreneurship models, and that's what they are lacking as well. And lastly, I want to ask questions to 2 speakers. As Professor Sako said, the Europe's cities of culture they are very small. And Seogwipo City has 200,000 population. What do you think is the priority for the larger cities like Seogwipo City? Among 12 factors, what would be the priorities? What do you think is priorities for Seogwipo City to develop its culture and economy? That's my question for you, Professor Sako. And about local creator, tourism, and culture, especially culture is very important to make sure the local economy can benefit from it. That means in order to make sure local creators can grow further, the private sector, of course, should make their own effort, but any support from the public sector is also needed. And do you have any idea about this support from the public sector? Mr. Lee, thank you very much. So he asked the question, among the 12 factors, what do you think is the prime things and priority for Seogwipo City?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank you for this wonderful debate. I'm really grateful to the other speaker and the panelists for very, very stimulating comments and ideas. Well, it's difficult to give an answer before really knowing the local reality in depth. Of course, I'm very curious about Seogwipo because, as it was said, I think it's one of the most promising possible future hubs for the reasons that were already mentioned. I mean, this big presence of cultural institutions and very lively local city, certainly without really knowing the local reality in depth, I would say that the development of local talent is probably a priority. Because especially in a moment in which, as it was mentioned already by my fellow presenter, Kim Yoo-jo, I totally agree. I mean, this local creativity is one of the future trends at the global level, but certainly in Korea, this is very well represented. Creating a new approach to the development of local talent, I think is particularly important. And also at the same time, internal networking. Creating a real alliance between local producers and local institutions, that's also very important. I was particularly impressed also by this emphasis on food culture. I totally agree. I mean, food culture can become a very, very strong cultural mediator. It's very strong for identity. It's related to creativity in many ways. And even people who do not know directly the local culture through food, they can connect. So I think that that's a wonderful idea. But certainly this emphasis on local talent and internal networking, I think, is probably one of the crucial first steps to go to the other level.
네, 감사합니다. 두 번째 질문인
Thank you for your answer. So the second question is about, in order to create more local creators, what would be the role of the public sector? Rather than explaining a lot, I think everyone agrees on the streets or stores. You can see many stores. The government needs to deregulate the industry so that many more people can actually enjoy those stores and those culture. We are witnessing growing interaction between producers and consumers, so deregulation is required. Real estate and streets. This is not just public places. They are actually a platform for cultural interactions. Thank you. Any question from the floor, from the audience? I think we have no question from the audience. Oh, we have one. Thank you for your comments and presentation. Personally, I want to ask our moderator, Seogwipo City, to become a true city of culture. There have been a lot of theories being discussed today, and Professor Kim, what do you think is the best investment that is required for Seogwipo City to become a true city of culture? I didn't really expect any question to me. I also have some time before closing the session. I first want to express my gratitude to Professor Sako and for discussants. Before I wrap up, I want to say the policymakers in the business world, when we want to some output, we need to have input. Seogwipo City says we are a small city. We have only 200,000 population, but that's not the right way to think of the city. Seogwipo City has 12 million visitors. So the 200,000 population is not the point. 12 million travelers are very important for their policymaking. And one more thing. Koreans, especially Jeju residents, they tend to avoid conflicts. But as Professor Sako said, there is disruptive conflict and productive conflict. In order for Jeju to move forward, we need more productive conflicts. Thank you.
네, 좋은 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you. So we have many things to protect in Jeju Island, and we have gotten a lot of insights from today's session. Please give 6 speakers and panelists a big hand. The session, A Cultural City as a Platform for Coexistence and Co-Evolution. The session is closed right now. Thank you, everyone.